Hello, welcome to Topper Machine. I'm Josh Topper. So today's job is an oil change on the Lion 23MT lathe. The book says to change oil after 30 to 60 running hours or days, and we're about 35 days at this point. We've worked it hard. We've worked it, on all the gears. I mean, it's seen a good break-in period. Until now we'll do a full oil change and then get this thing ready to go back into service. Now the oil change is pretty involved. We got to change out the oil in the feed box here and the headstock. And I found the drain plugs, I found the fill plug for the feed box, I found the fill plug for the headstock, but we need to take the top cover off instead and just do a quick inspection internally and see what is all in there and how things are looking as far as the clutches, the brake, and just check it all out. And according to the manual, we're supposed to change out the oil in the apron. I don't know that that's actually necessary because you use that oil for the ways also. But I'll take a look at it. We'll see just what it looks like. Maybe something we do, might not be. Just as far as I've always done is once a year you clean out the pump housing, and that's on the Monarchs. I don't know how these are as far as cleaning them out, but they do recommend changing the oil, so we might do that too. So the first thing we're going to do here, we're going to open up the back cover. This is the drain plug for the headstock. The one for the feed box is down there behind that limit switch. We'll have to take that limit switch off to get at it. And something I noticed when I first got this lathe is this ring here, just off the end of the spindle, is basically a drain for coolant. So you don't have coolant just coming out onto the floor, and it goes down the pipe here, this hose, and goes right back to the chip pan. So a pretty nice setup. So after watching Adam Booth struggle with his Precision Matthews, this is an old trick that I've used for years, is you put a zip tie on your funnel here, on the little holder, and that'll go right over that drain spigot because this has a pipe. But the problem here is my funnel ain't long enough. So what I'm going to do is take this piece of black pipe I got and just wedge it in there nice and tight. And now we can get it down in our bucket. Take our zip tie and just tighten it up. If I can get my fat hands in there. Open up the plug and see what happens. See if I make a mess. Looks like that's working really well. As long as my chunk of black pipe don't fall off. I see my lighting isn't the best right there. Maybe it's me blocking the light. But we're getting down there to where I gotta kind of hold the funnel back because it wants to, where it loops back. See if I can't push my zip tie back a little further. And I was wrong, I was not catching it all. It's coming down the side of the funnel, and so I'm gonna have to clean that up. I got floor dry and rags, so we'll get that cleaned up good. So a disaster kind of like Adam had too, just maybe not as bad, but still pretty bad. Rags here and clean this up a bit. And it's still draining a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and put the plug back in just to stop it up for a few minutes, let it kind of collect again back in the, by the funnel there, or the drain, and then we'll attack it, open it up and let it go again. All right, so while that oil continues to pool, we're going to go ahead and take off the guard up here, and then there's a limit switch I got to take off too. Of course, I picked the wrong one both times. This screw is just a stop so that the guard can't come all the way off. But now it can. And we'll go ahead and take out all the bolts around the perimeter, and this limit switch will have to come off and get set to the side. Okay, so apparently they don't want me taking this limit switch out. They're safety Torx. They've got the little pin in it, and I don't have any of those anymore, so I'm just going to open it up and see if I can't just unhook it. It looks pretty simple, 2 wires, just an on-off connection. Because I don't want to pull the cord too far, so we're just going to disconnect it. Like I said, I don't want to run the risk of damaging the switch or anything, so I want to be able to get the cover out of the way safely, so this is how we'll do it. And the power has been shut off to the lathe, disconnected, so we're all good to go there. All right, let's go ahead and get the bolts out of the cover. And actually, let me put this back together so I don't lose anything. At least part way. There is a fill plug, and it is down here, and this cabinet's actually on a hinge and swings out of the way, but I would have to remove the entire splash guard on the back of the lathe, and I don't feel like doing that. But I wanted to open it up and at least inspect the inside of the machine and just make sure everything's good. This is where the clutches are. Okay, so it looks like we got another cover underneath, more or less I'm guessing a splash guard to keep the oil from splashing up because they're not using a seal up here. And everything's pretty clean, so I'll go ahead and get these out. We'll lift this cover out and we'll be able to take a look at everything. So there are the clutches, your forward and reverse clutch. We'll have to operate the lever to see which way. Here is the brake and everything is oil bath, so the longevity of everything is pretty good. Oil lines, must be a pretty good size oil pump in there actually, because when this thing's running, there is, on the sight glass that shows the oil flow, it's really spraying. I mean, it's blowing oil good. We got an oil line blowing directly into our spindle bearings and up into, dripping into these two for the front spindle bearing. I know it's hard to really see what's all going on in there, but it looks really well built. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and wipe everything down best I can. I'll probably look at the clutches, see if we need to adjust anything. The brakes might need adjusting. It's we're in that run-in period, so it's hard telling, but I'd have to get back in here to adjust everything, which is no big deal. Like I said, everything's oil bath, so their longevity is there. It's kind of like a motorcycle with the wet clutch. You never touch them. So pretty nice setup. So we'll go ahead and I'll just wipe this out, get it cleaned up best I can, and then we'll go ahead and dump the oil in and move on. We'll come back over here and just make sure we got the last of the oil out now that things have settled. And there's some oil coming out. That's okay. Any oil change, no matter what it is, you're always going to have a little bit of oil left over in the end. And we'll call that good enough. I got some more cleanup to do here as oil just keeps seeping out. I can definitely see why Adam had so many problems, and it seems to be a common thing with changing oil on lathes. So I got quite a bit of oil that came out and onto the floor there. So I'll throw some Fuller Dry on that and soak it up and clean that up good. I did concrete sealer on the floor here before I put the lathe in, just because I was running coolant in this one and wanted to try to keep things cleaner, and I'm glad I did, because that'll just keep the concrete from staining and soaking up that oil. All right, here's the oil I'm going to use. This is readily available to me in this area. This is Sunoco Sunvis 832. It's an ISO VG32 weight, and this is equivalent to what Lion recommends. Just because what Lion recommends, I just couldn't get it locally right now. With everything going on in the world, things are hard to get. So this is a compatible substitute, so that's what we're going to use. And so it looks like about 2 gallons, so we'll go ahead and we'll dump in 2 gallons and we'll just watch the sight glass and get it up to full level. All right, let's go ahead and pour this in. Now the hard part here is pouring and watching the sight glass at the same time. And if you were paying attention when I started pouring, I was pouring with the spout of the bucket up. That was so that I got a little air gap for pouring, so that I can pour easier. And here it comes. And we want to get it just to the top of the full mark. Stop there and see what it looks like. And looks like we can do a little bit more, not a lot. All right, that looks good. Now let's go ahead and put this thing all back together. Okay, so the next thing we got to do is change the oil in the feed box. And the problem is this limit switch is right in front of the drain here. Here's our sight glass, and this is our fill plug up here. And I've got a plan for filling that, but I'm going to have to take this limit switch off and just get it out of my way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so this is going to be a little difficult, and before anybody laughs at me for my solution here, which I actually think is a really good one, I'm going to loosen my drain plug here, get it started, and I'm going to take this chunk of nice channel and lay that on there as a trough, and we'll go ahead and it's a little bit of an angle, so it should work and it shouldn't make too big of a mess, I'm hoping. And so far it actually looks like it's going to work. And it is dribbling just a little bit in the back there, but it is what it is. I'll have to clean that up. I'm going to go ahead and pop the filler plug loose, if I can get in there. Oh yeah. Because I just have a fear this one's just like Adam's with the no vent. There we go. Now we just let that drain. Yeah, a little bit of lost oil there. Just not enough angle on that my trough there, but like I said, I'll clean that up, floor dry too, and try to get everything cleaned up the best I can, but at least that helped a lot. So I pulled the front cover off the lathe, and I don't know if you can see there's a puddle back there. And the puddle right here, I already got the floor dry on that stuff. I'll get that all cleaned up before I button this back up. Looks like we're mostly done draining. Go ahead and put the drain plug back in. So I made this funnel, or made this little adapter on the end years ago for the Monarchs, because filling the apron on the Monarch is almost impossible, just because it's so small. So I made this adapter, and I'm just going to take this piece of rubber fuel line, and this will be a slow process, obviously, but this ought to fit right in there. Yep. And then I'll take my oil can here and fill it up with the oil recommended, and I'll just pour it in and just kind of wait and watch the glass. Like I said, this is going to be a very slow process because it doesn't flow through that funnel very fast. I don't know if you can see the line there of the oil. It's right there, and it just goes very, very slow because it's such a small line. There, it's starting to come up. You can just see it in there. And I'm having similar problems to Adam had, even with my hose just a little smaller, it's still fighting me. but it's coming. Looks like I need just a little more. Yeah, looks like this will do it. Yeah, they definitely should install a vent in these just to make it easier to fill. But looks like we're... All right, go ahead and wipe this thing up. Try to get all of our runaway oil. I got some on the floor to clean up again. Put our fill plug back in. And we'll go ahead and get our limit switch back on for the door, and we should be able to power it up and see how it runs. And we got oil flow. This is telling us we got flow. You see now how the oil jumped up in the glass. Everything's looking good. And let's give it a quick test run. And this is actually the sight glass for the feed oiler, the feed box oiler, and it's showing it's pumping, so everything's working properly. Yeah, everything sounds good in that speed range. Let's go ahead and shift to, that's 500 RPM. Let's take it up to 1,000 and see how that sounds. That sounds good. And the braking is pretty good. I don't need to adjust the brake. That's something, the clutch and the brake, you need to adjust occasionally after a run-in period, but since they're oil bath, they should last quite a while, just the break-in period. The book says 30 to 90 days and check it again, or 60 to 90 and check that. Now let's shift it down to a lower gear. Let's go down to the 31.5 RPM. That sounds good. The reverse sounds good. I think we're in good shape. Well, that's the first full oil change on the Lion, the break-in oil. And it all went pretty well. There was a few hiccups, and you know, Adam Booth had the same problems with his precision math. He was with, the drains are just not well thought out on any of this stuff, but it went really well. And now we got fresh oil in it. We're good to go for a while. We'll check it again in a few months and see how we are. But I got one more thing I want to do to this lathe before we end the video. I got a little something I want to put right here on the chuck guard. So now my name is on it. I'm still making payments on it, but I'm very happy with the outcome. The only problem that I've had with it at all, the only complaint, was that I didn't buy it sooner. I looked at these about 3 years ago, and I just couldn't justify the money at the time. But as things progressed, the business progressed, the work progressed. It just became very apparent that I had to do something and I had to do it quickly. And so I bought this one, and I have no regrets other than waiting so long to buy it. The spindles bore, the higher spindle speeds, the metric threading, everything about it has been just a great asset to the shop. And I just wish I would have done it sooner. I still love my Monarchs, don't get me wrong. I still got the 12CK and the 18CU, but this is my primary lathe now that I'm using for just about everything, because now everything really fits well on this machine, and I have spindle reverse, which I don't have on the Monarchs. Just great features all around. So until next time, get out in your shop and get it done right the first time.